A mother was preparing a birthday celebration for her daughter. She placed a small offering beside the family altar. She lit a candle, and in front of an old photograph, she whispered, "Happy birthday." But her daughter had been dead for years. The only thing left from her childhood was a Japanese doll sitting beside the photograph. The mother had cleaned that doll many times. She knew every detail of its face, its painted mouth, its dark glass eyes, and its perfectly cut black hair. But when she leaned closer that evening, something was different. A strand of hair was resting across the doll's kimono. The mother reached forward and lifted it. Then she froze, because the strand continued far beyond where the doll's hair was supposed to end. What the family discovered next would turn a child's toy into one of Japan's most unsettling legends. This is the story of Okiku, the doll whose hair refused to stop growing. Okiku's story has been passed down for more than a century. Some details change between different retellings, but nearly every version begins the same way, with an older brother, a little girl, and a doll bought as a gift. The story begins in Hokkaido, Japan, in 1918. A young man named Eikichi Suzuki was visiting Sapporo. While walking through the city, he noticed a traditional Japanese doll displayed in a shop. It was dressed in a small kimono. Its black hair had been cut into a neat, traditional bob. Eikichi immediately thought of his little sister. She was only around 2 years old, and like many older brothers returning from a journey, he wanted to bring her something special. So he bought the doll and carried it home. His sister loved it. Some versions identify the girl as Kikuko. Others refer to her as Okiku, the name eventually associated with the doll. The child quickly became inseparable from her new companion. She carried it around the house. She spoke to it as though it could understand her. Eventually, the family began calling the doll by the child's own name, Okiku. For a short time, it was simply a toy, a gift from an older brother to his younger sister. Then something happened that changed everything. The child became seriously ill. Her condition worsened quickly. She passed away while still very young, reportedly at only 3 years old. The family was devastated. They had intended to place the doll with her during the funeral, but the doll remained behind. Some versions say the family forgot it in the confusion and grief. Others say they could not bring themselves to let it go. Instead, they placed the doll on the household altar beside the girl's photograph. It became part of the family's memorial to her. They prayed in front of it. They left offerings nearby. And on important dates, they spoke to their daughter as though she were still present. The doll was no longer just a toy. It had become the last object that still felt connected to the child. Years passed, but on her birthday, the family still prepared a small memorial for her. Her mother placed an offering beside the photograph. She lit a candle. Then she carefully cleaned the doll that had once belonged to her daughter. As she adjusted its kimono, she noticed a black strand lying across its chest. At first, she assumed the hair had simply fallen out of place. But when she lifted the strand, it continued farther than she expected. The doll's hair had once ended in a short, tidy cut around its shoulders. Now, several strands reached much lower. The mother called the rest of the family to look. The difference seemed impossible to ignore. Still, they searched for an ordinary explanation. Perhaps the hair had become tangled. Perhaps they had forgotten its original length. Perhaps grief was making the change seem greater than it really was. So the family straightened the hair and trimmed it back to the length they remembered. They placed the doll on the altar again, and for a while, nothing appeared unusual. But months later, the hair was long again. It had grown past the point where they had cut it. The family began to believe that part of the child had entered the doll. To them, the growing hair was not simply a strange physical change, it was a sign that their daughter was still developing, still changing, still somehow growing older. Okiku was not described as violent. She did not chase the family through the house. She did not suddenly move when someone entered the room. The fear was much quieter. The doll simply remained on the altar, still, silent, watching the family as they passed. Imagine seeing it every morning. The family reportedly began having strange dreams. Some retellings mention unexplained noises near the altar. Others describe a feeling that the room was no longer empty. It placed the family in an impossible position. They feared the doll, but they also loved what it represented. If they destroyed it, were they destroying the last connection to their daughter? If they abandoned it, were they abandoning her a second time? For years, they continued caring for Okiku. Then the family prepared to leave the area. They did not want to take the doll with them, but they could not simply throw it away. So they brought it to a temple. The most widely repeated version says that the family entrusted Okiku to Mannenji Temple in Hokkaido. They explained the history of the doll. They told the priests that it had belonged to their little girl, and they warned them that its hair appeared to grow. The priests accepted it. For the family, the temple was a place where the child's spirit could be treated respectfully. The doll would be protected. Prayers could be offered for the girl, and Okiku would no longer be alone. But the story did not end when the family left. According to the legend, the priests also began noticing that the hair was becoming longer. They reportedly trimmed it whenever it grew too far. As stories about the doll spread, visitors began traveling to the temple to see it. Some said they felt uneasy before they even entered the room. Others felt as though the doll's glass eyes followed them. A few claimed its expression seemed to change depending on the angle of the light. And some visitors believed they could feel the presence of a little girl standing nearby. The doll is still associated with Mannenji Temple today. It is not usually described as an evil object. The temple is not protecting people from a dangerous spirit. Instead, believers say the priests are caring for a child who never left her favorite doll. But there may be another explanation for the growing hair. A doll's hair cannot grow biologically. Human hair grows because living cells inside follicles produce new material and push the strand outward. Once hair has been cut away from a living scalp, the strand itself is no longer alive. A doll has no functioning follicles, no blood supply, and no living tissue capable of producing new hair. So if Okiku's hair became visibly longer, something else must have caused it. One explanation comes from the way hair can be attached to traditional dolls. Long strands may be folded in half and inserted into small holes in the head. This creates a U-shaped strand. The two visible ends hang outside the doll, while the folded section remains hidden inside its head. Over time, the hair can become loose. Old adhesives weaken. Humidity affects wood, fabric, and other materials. Repeated brushing, cutting, or handling can slowly pull more of the concealed strand outward. From the outside, it would look as though the hair had grown. There is also a psychological explanation. The family was grieving, and the doll was deeply connected to their memories of the child. Human memory is not a perfect recording. The family may not have remembered the original hair length precisely. Once one person believed it was growing, everyone began watching for changes. An uneven strand became evidence. A shadow across the face looked like a new expression, and every small difference felt meaningful. This does not mean the family was lying. People can honestly experience something unusual while interpreting it through grief, expectation, and fear. The slipping hair theory could explain what happened, but completely confirming it would require opening the doll's head and examining how every strand was attached. The temple has reportedly not allowed such an invasive investigation. To the people caring for Okiku, she is not simply an old object to dismantle. She may contain the spirit of a child. So the mystery remains, not necessarily because science has no answer, but because fully testing that answer could damage the doll people are trying to protect. Visitors who stand before Okiku do not usually report seeing her walk. They do not claim she suddenly turns her head. Most describe something far simpler: the uncomfortable feeling that she knows they are there. A sense that someone is watching from behind the glass eyes. Perhaps it is only the human mind reacting to a face designed to look almost alive. Perhaps age, humidity, and the way the hair was attached created the illusion of growth. And perhaps grief transformed an ordinary doll into something powerful enough to survive for more than a century. But for those who believe the legend, Okiku's story has another meaning. Maybe the hair did not grow because Okiku was dangerous. Maybe it grew because the child wanted her family to know she was still there. And somewhere inside a quiet temple in Hokkaido, the doll continues to wait. Her painted face unchanged, her body perfectly still, while visitors watch her hair, wondering whether it will be longer the next time they return.